Hi guys, welcome to Origin. This is a review of Sam Harris's book, The Moral Landscape. Now, the YouTube user Adrame69 has uploaded the whole audiobook onto YouTube. That's where I listened to it, and I'm going to link the first part so that if any of you want to see, if any of you want to hear it yourself, you can go there. Now, the central idea of the book is that Sam Harris is proposing a science of morality. He describes it as looking at brain states to determine a person's well-being, and to measure that well-being in terms of peaks and troughs on a mathematical space, most likely a graph, which he refers to as the moral landscape. Now, when Sam Harris first presented the idea, when I first heard about it, the first thing that occurred to me was David Hume's is-ought problem. Essentially, you can't have objective morality because you can't derive an ought from an is. Just a brief example, let's say that I wanted to walk to the door there, and I wanted to do it as quickly as possible. Then I ought to walk in a straight line. But it doesn't say why I should walk in a straight line, or even head towards the door to begin with. Now, I was very glad that Sam Harris addressed this in his book. In fact, I was really hoping he would, and he did. And this is how he gets around it. When making the transcendental argument for the existence of God, theists say, well, you can't explain logic using logic. You can't use logic to prove logic. So the very basis of science is flawed. But this doesn't stop science from making useful predictions about our world and determining useful information about our world. The same is true for a science of morality with regard to David Hume's is-ought problem. It doesn't pose a problem to this science. The fact that you can't derive an ought from an is doesn't change the fact that you can measure someone's brain states. You can use that to determine, how happy they are, how satisfied they are, and that you could then use that information to map which actions produce which effects in the human brain. Now, here's really the only significant criticism I have with the book, is that he spent pretty much the whole of it addressing these philosophical objections, religious objections, etc., when they don't pose a problem for the science at all. And from looking at the reviews, it didn't really seem like it made much difference. They either restated points which he'd already addressed in the book, or they just brought up new philosophical objections, or they were the result of religious bias. If I were Sam Harris and I had a second crack at this book, what I would do differently is actually go into more detail explaining what a science of morality would entail. For example, there's a few useful things you can say about it without even really knowing much about the details of this particular science. The first being, there's a finite number of neurons in the brain, and a finite number of connections that they make with other neurons. So there must be a finite upper and lower limit to well-being. He talked about how people would see a problem with defining well-being in the first place. But again, that's not really a problem if you split well-being up into its possible component parts. Happiness, general life satisfaction, the effect that, having freedom or not having certain freedoms would have on your well-being, lifespan, health. All of these things will factor into someone's well-being, and all of these things would have to be seriously considered with a science of morality. There was one criticism that this could be used to create a scientific totalitarian state, where you'd have some chip installed, and if your actions were immoral by the standard of this science, then you could be identified and punished really quickly. But that's not a problem with the actual science, that's a political objection. Sam Harris would surely be aware of this, and he wouldn't have this kind of thing in mind. Really, the only other objection I have constitutes nitpicking, and it's on the language he uses. I still wouldn't say that it could be called objectively good or bad, because that's still a value judgment. It's still, good or bad is still something that's subjective by definition. So it might have been better received if, instead of bringing good and bad into it, he'd simply phrased it as, you're more moral by this scientific standard if your actions increase well-being, and less moral if they decrease well-being. Bringing the whole concept of objective morality into it seemed to cause philosophical confusion. Now, the other point that I wanted to make is that surely a science of this sort is still quite a while away, because neuroscience is still in its infancy. You need to be able to get to the point where essentially you can map entire human brains onto a computer to analyse each individual neuron or something. Sam Harris is obviously, as a neuroscientist, in a better position to tell us how far away we are from that than I am, but just that general idea I'm throwing out here. But yeah, I don't see any fundamental problems with the idea. What do you guys think? Thank you for watching, goodbye.